Thanks, Shahidi, for the very nice and flattering welcome. And this is my first talk at Cheenta, yes. And hope that everything goes okay. And I live up to the expectation, high hopes that Shahidi has set for me. Okay. So let us get started right away with this presentation without further ado. So let me put it everything into my presentation mode and let us get started. Okay. So, this is a talk that is a combination of mainly physics and electronics, a little bit apart from what you all do at Chinta, which is basically mathematical thinking. But nevertheless, I hope that you will find this talk quite exciting because it relates to so many of the disciplines that we deal with day in and day out. So let's cut to the chase, and this talk is about what are known as memristors. So memristors are a class of electronic devices which, as you will soon find out, sure enough, that they are applied in a variety of ways in different circumstances, and they are quite fascinating. Not least because of the fact that they have immense applications, but they are a kind of uh, proponent for future devices, which is really exciting. So let's get to explore the fascinating world of memristors. So just a brief kind of disclaimer here: people who are amongst you who are electronics nerds or they find interest in electronics will definitely find the topic of memristors fascinating. But physics guys, I hope also have much to take away from this talk. Okay, so let us get started. So let us first getting to the get without first getting to the problem of memory devices as such and memristors. We first want to kind of concentrate on the point, of why memory is such a crucial element of computing devices. So any computer, as you all perhaps know, needs immense memory, and memory at different hierarchy: fast memory, slow memory, large memory, small memory, and so on and so forth. So memory is a very, very crucial component, and let's get to see why we need memory. So let us try to see a basic architecture of how a computer is laid out and how it does the fascinating things that a computer is able to do. So at the first end, where the computer interfaces with us is basically through the use of input devices, such as keyboard and mice, which is shown schematically here. And at the other end, and you must be knowing that what computer do is essentially processing information and giving out responses. So how does it show responses? Through output devices. What is the most famous output device? A monitor. You have speakers also as output devices, but let's not get to those details. But let us try to understand the crucial component which comes in the middle, which is the CPU. The CPU is essentially what does the number crunching for us. It gets all the information in the form of bits and bytes, and it processes them and gives out intelligible output. So let us try to break apart the CPU also for a bit and try to explore the topic in a little more detail. So CPU consists of two main components. One is the processor. The processor is basically the computing device, and we also have something called as a RAM. So RAM is random access memory, and random access memory is a form of fast memory which the CPU is able to access. And CPU needs a lot of memory for doing its computation, because think of how you will do a calculation in mind. You cannot keep in memory all the information that is required to perform a computation, right? You have a limited amount of working memory. So what you do whilst doing a computation is that you offload some of the information that is not required into some temporary storage area, say a notepad, if you are doing some calculations on a pen with a pen and paper. But again, that information may be required later for further calculations downstream, right? So you need to store information in a safe repository, and you need to access that fast, so that as and when you need it, you need not be waiting for the information to come through to you. So that is very essential, and that is the reason why we have RAM, which is random access memory. That means any part of the memory can be accessed instantaneously. And the more important thing about RAM is that it should be fast. You should not be The processor should not be kept waiting, because remember that the output depends on the output of the processor. So if the processor hangs up or it gets interrupted, the output will be interrupted. So you need the RAM to be fast. But apart from that, the thing that is most important and exciting probably for all of you is that there is memory also built into the CPU itself, because the CPU needs some kind of memory that is super fast and that is even faster than RAM. So that is a form of memory that sits in the CPU itself, and these are known as cache memories, which I have not depicted here. But remember, they are a very crucial part of any computing systems. So the takeaway from this whole slide is that memory is a very crucial part, and you cannot do without memory. So that is the message that I want to take away from this. And this is the central part, the processor, which does all the computation for us. Okay. So now I think you have got an impression that memory is a very crucial component, and you need memory to be fast. You need memory to be plentiful, because right now what is happening in our world is that information is coming in at a horrendous space, and you need to store the information somewhat and then process it, obviously. But you need to store the information, so you need memory that is fast, and for some applications you need memory that is large. So there are two different dichotomies here and trade-offs, if you may want to uh, treat it as such. So one thing is that you trade off storage space for faster memory, and you trade off faster memory for more storage space. So these things are kind of contradictory, in that you cannot achieve those two objectives simultaneously. You can sacrifice one and get the advantage of the other. So storage class memories is a class of memories which is a little bit different from the memories that we have just discussed in the previous slide. So the previous slide discussed very, very fast memory, which is very close to the processor. Now we kind of we want to consider memory which is a little bit farther apart from the CPU. But this memory has a lot of storage capacity. So essentially, it's because of this fact that they can store a large amount of data. They can store data in a non-volatile fashion. And that means, I'll come to the concept soon enough, but essentially non-volatile is a very simple concept, which means that when you switch off the computer, the data stays in memory. If you recall the previous two memories we discussed, what is the on-chip memory and the random access memory, these are all non-volatile memories. Whenever the power goes off, these memories will turn up into a blank slate. So this is very important. But storage class memories can store a large amount of information, and they can hold this information even in the absence of power. So let's see what are the different classes of storage class memories that is both existent, and then we'll slowly, and this will slowly lead us into the topic of our today's discussion, which is a memristor. So first of all, storage class memories are constituted of semiconductor devices. So semiconductors, if you can kindly recall, so semiconductor essentially that thing, those stand between insulators and conductors. Insulators are non-conductive, conductors are conducting, and semiconductors stand in between, and their conductivity can be modulated. So that is also a very important feature of semiconductors. So semiconductor memories also can be categorized into two kinds, the volatile and the non-volatile. I've already given you a brief introduction to those topics of volatile and non-volatile. Now let us see how these are really materialized in practice. So in the volatile category, I already said DRAM and SRAM. These are two different specializations of random access memory. In the previous slide, we learned about random access memory as being an important component. But now we are kind of getting into a fine-grained classification of RAMs into static RAMs, which is SRAM, and dynamic RAM, which is DRAM. But discussion of these things, how they work, is beyond the scope of this presentation. So let's not delve into that topic any further. But it's important for us to understand the non-volatile part, because that will be a segue into a topic of discussion of memristors today. Yeah, and as depicted, these SRAM and DRAMs come in the form of familiar semiconductor PCBs that you can see, that you can plug in as a module, as a multi-chip module into your computers, into your CPUs. And non-volatile memory is the quintessential flash memories, a pen drive or a memory stick, or an SD card and all those things. So these are categories of flash memories. And these are semiconductor memories which are non-volatile, because probably you all know that the flash can retain information for a long time, right? So without even without the existence of any power. So flash memories, the pen drive does not need any power for information to be retained therein, right? So these are non-volatile memories. They can keep information without power. But flash again can be categorized into two different kind of architectures, which is NAND and NOR, which I won't go into again. But our concentration here is into a new category of RAMs, which is a resistive RAM. Now let's dissect the name a little bit further. Here, resistive, RE stands for resistive. That means this works on the phenomena of resistance. And RAM means it's a random access memory, just like static RAM and dynamic RAM. So random access memory means the information can be located anywhere within that chip or the module, and it can be accessed in a constant amount of time. So no matter where the information is, it can be accessed in a constant amount of time. Okay. So even if we want to delve into this topic of RDRAMs a little further, RDRAMs are they constitute many different things constitute RDRAMs, and let us try to get a brief overview of what are the different physics mechanisms that contribute to the working of RDRAMs. So you can take this as an aside, and it's probably optional. It won't deter you if you do not understand this slide. It won't deter you from understanding the main conceptual thread of this presentation. But nevertheless, for the sake of completeness, let us see this. So RDRAMs can be categorized into something called as electrochemical metallization cells, which depends on some phase change kind of thing for the cells, for the memory, for the information to be stored in the memory. And again, phase change memory is another category of phase change in which the material state itself changes. So phase, probably you can recall as a solid to liquid is a phase transition. That is a very common phenomena. A liquid to gas transition. And here again, materials also have some phases like crystalline phase and amorphous phase. And phase change memories work on those material phase change phenomena. Right? Then we have something as a macromolecular memory. So macromolecules are big molecules that are chained together, and these kinds of molecules can self-organize themselves into very nice patterns, into very effective patterns, and the conductivity can change depending on the patterns into which they self-organize into. So the memory changes based on that principle. So this is another change, another important memory. And finally, we have what is known as a valence change memory. And valence is also probably familiar to you. You know that every chemical element has a valence. That means essentially how it will try to share electrons with a neighboring atom when they form larger compounds. So there are materials, I won't go into the details, there are very interesting materials that have a variable valence. And depending on the valence, which can be thermally assisted as well, we have a change in resistance, and this phenomena is exploited in what is known as a valence change memory. So this is essentially a brief review of all the mechanisms that go into it. Okay. So everything is done. We have given a brief overview of why do you need memory, what are the different types of memories we have, and we have given a brief overview of RDRAMs as a new category of non-volatile memory and the random access memory, and we have seen the different types of RDRAMs that are there in existence from the physics perspective. Now, all these RDRAMs can be abstracted away into a particular device which is known as a memristor. So this is a kind of circuit element that you can think of as forming the essence of resistive memory, right? So this memristor is this typical circuit element. And let's try to understand from a circuit point of view how the memristor comes into the picture. Right? So people who have taken a course on circuits and systems will know that circuits operate on some fundamental electrical variables, which are again an abstraction from physics. These are the voltage, the current, the charge, and the magnetic flux phi. So these are what are known as the fundamental circuit variables. And these elements are also related, right? So, and let's try to get to the relationship. So phi the magnetic flux linkage is related to V as d phi is equal to V dt. So a differential change in time and multiplied by the voltage will give a differential change in flux. So this is a differential relation. Similarly, this is a more familiar relation. dq is equal to I dt. A current I flowing through a differential amount of time dt results in a charge dq accumulating. So these are the broad overview of some of the relationships between these variables. And now let us see how different circuit elements fit into this picture in the sense that circuit elements modify, manipulate these variables, right? And let's see which circuit element modifies which variable or interacts with which variables. So a resistor, as is the most common circuit element, it operates on voltage and current. So that's why it's in the uh, upper left quadrant of this diagram. And the relationship, the differential relationship is also shown underneath. And similarly, we have something was on the capacitor. So the capacitor relates voltage to charge. So that's why it's in the right top quadrant. Finally, we have an inductor which relates phi to the current I flowing through that inductor. So this is again a fundamental circuit element. And now comes the most crucial element which relates Q to phi. Now, a question may come to your mind, why this memristor was not discovered for a long time? Because people knew that because resistors, capacitors, and inductors were discovered long before, probably say in the 18th century, early 18th century. So these were long known. Then why come we have to discover the memristor at such a later date? It is because the symmetry was not quite explored. That how we have two different circuit variables like Q and phi, and there sits an element which is inviting itself to be discovered that connects these two important circuit elements. So Q and phi, the relationship was undiscovered for a long time, and that is how the missing piece memristor comes into the picture. It relates the circuit variable phi and the Q. It's again a differential relationship. M multiplied by a charge flowing a differential amount of charge dq results in a change in the magnetic flux linkage d phi. And you should note that in all those relationships r, c, and l, these are coming in as important parameters of the equation. And now, sure enough, there is an m as a memristance that comes into this picture, into this relationship. So this is how memristors are coming into a picture. Okay, so let's try to see a typical memristor curve, how it looks. So this is a basic electrical characterization of a memristor. So let us try to apply a voltage, an input voltage to the memristor. So that's why we are tracing on the left hand side the voltage as a function of time. And let's see how the characteristics of the memristor changes. So by the characteristics of a memristor, we mean how the current through the memristor is responding to the voltage, right, applied across it. So that is an essential signature of any circuit element. So let us first try to ramp down the voltage into the negative side. So the memristor, we should mention that we start with the memristor in an off state. A memristor can have two different states, the off state and the on state. And we'll try to see how the transition of the memristor is characterized. Right? So now the memristor is in off state, and as we ramp down, the memristor switches to the on state, right? And this is again the characteristics of the on state of the memristor. So the green line shows the on state. So there is a little typo here. It should be the off state to the on state. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Datta, for this wonderful and insightful section. Your journey from engineering and applied physics to data science and finally to teaching truly reminds us that learning never stops and passion always finds it a way. So I'm sure everyone watching today has been inspired by your thoughts on research, curiosity, and the joy of teaching. It's always a pleasure to hear from someone who bridges the worlds of science, technology, and education so beautifully. To all our viewers, thank you for joining us live today. We will back soon with another live session. Until then, keep learning, keep exploring. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening ahead.